A well-known face from the Quad Cities and beloved figure in the world of antique picking nationwide has passed away.
American picker star Fritz has died at the age of 60.
Fritz, known for his role in the hit series American Pickers, had always been a collector with an eye for the unusual. What began as a passion for motorcycles and antiques evolved into something much more significant over the years. His Iowa mansion, purchased after years of television success, became his sanctuary and the repository for his most treasured finds. The FBI investigation began quietly. What appeared to be a routine inquiry into potentially smuggled antiquities quickly escalated when agents uncovered documents linking Fritz to an international network of collectors. These weren't just any collectors. They specialized in items with historical significance that had disappeared during times of conflict. The first discovery came in the east wing of the mansion. Behind a false wall in what appeared to be an ordinary display room, agents found a climate-controlled chamber containing artifacts dating back to World War II. These weren't just collectibles. They were historical pieces thought lost to time, items that had been meticulously documented in Fritz's private ledgers, but never revealed to the public. Deeper investigation revealed Fritz had been working as an unofficial recovery specialist, using his connections and expertise from American Pickers to trace and recover items stolen during wartime. His network stretched across Europe and into Asia, with contacts ranging from museum curators to underground auction houses. What made this discovery particularly shocking was the revelation that Fritz had been cooperating with several international agencies for years. His public persona as a simple antique collector had been the perfect cover for his more clandestine recovery work. The mansion itself was designed with multiple secure rooms, each housing different categories of recovered items awaiting proper authentication before being returned to their rightful owners or countries. Among the most significant finds was a collection of art pieces believed destroyed during the bombing of Dresden. These pieces, carefully preserved and authenticated by Fritz, were accompanied by extensive documentation tracking their provenance and the complex route they had taken since disappearing in 1945. The FBI's initial suspicion of wrongdoing quickly transformed into respect as they uncovered the true purpose of Fritz's collection. Rather than hoarding these historical treasures, he had been meticulously preparing them for return, a fact confirmed by correspondence found between Fritz and various international cultural ministries. The health challenges that had removed Fritz from the public eye in recent years added another layer to the story. What appeared to be a retreat from public life was actually a period of intense focus on his recovery work, using his remaining time to organize the collection for eventual repatriation. Documents found in Fritz's personal study revealed his motivations. His grandfather, who had served in Europe during World War II, had witnessed firsthand the looting of cultural treasures. Stories passed down through the family had instilled in Fritz a deep respect for historical artifacts and their cultural significance. The most startling discovery came 3 days into the investigation. In a hidden basement accessible only through a sophisticated security system, agents found what appeared to be an ordinary antique desk. Inside was a manuscript detailing hundreds of still-missing artifacts, complete with possible locations and contacts who might assist in their recovery. This document, which Fritz had been compiling for years, represented a roadmap for continuing his work. As news of the discovery spread, the narrative around Fritz began to shift. Former colleagues from American Pickers expressed surprise, but acknowledged that Fritz had always been drawn to items with significant historical stories. His keen interest in wartime memorabilia, once viewed as simply another collecting category, now appeared in a new light. The international implications of the discovery were immediate. Representatives from several European countries arrived to assist in identifying items that had been missing from their national collections for decades. The diplomatic goodwill generated by Fritz's clandestine work spanned continents, with formal statements of gratitude issued by countries from Poland to Japan. Perhaps most poignant were the personal stories that emerged. Families who had lost precious heirlooms during wartime displacements began to come forward as news of specific recovered items was released. Fritz's detailed documentation included, where possible, the names of original owners, allowing for some items to be returned to descendants after generations of absence. The FBI's investigation, which began as a potential criminal matter, evolved into a coordinated international effort to catalog and properly repatriate the recovered items. The mansion itself became a temporary processing center, with experts from around the world assisting in the identification and authentication process. Fritz's own journals, discovered in his private quarters, revealed the personal toll this secret work had taken. Entries described the emotional weight of handling items with such tragic histories and his determination to see them returned despite growing health challenges. His withdrawal from public life, once attributed solely to health issues, now appeared partly strategic, allowing him to focus on completing as much of his recovery work as possible. The legal status of Fritz's activities presented a complex question for authorities. While some of his methods operated in gray areas of international law, the intent behind his collection was clearly restitution rather than personal gain. This distinction would prove crucial in the months of legal discussions that followed. Financial records indicated that Fritz had been funding this recovery work personally, using his earnings from television and his own antique business to finance the often expensive process of authenticating and preserving found items. Rather than profiting from these historical treasures, he had been quietly depleting his own resources to ensure their survival. As the full scope of Fritz's collection came to light, museums around the world began to express interest in holding temporary exhibitions of the recovered items before their final repatriation. This prospect raised new questions about how best to honor both the historical significance of the artifacts and Fritz's dedication to their recovery. The mansion's security systems revealed another layer to the story. Fritz had employed state-of-the-art technology to protect the recovered items, with different security protocols for different sections of the collection. This systematic approach demonstrated the seriousness with which he viewed his self-appointed responsibility as a temporary guardian of these historical pieces. Interviews with Fritz's limited circle of confidants revealed that only a handful of trusted individuals had known about his secret work. Even close associates from his television career had been unaware of the full scope of his collection activities. This tight circle of trust had helped maintain the secrecy necessary for some of his more sensitive recovery operations. The investigation also uncovered evidence of Fritz's ongoing negotiations with several countries regarding the return of particularly significant items. These diplomatic discussions, conducted quietly and without publicity, demonstrated his understanding of the complex political considerations surrounding cultural repatriation. Perhaps most surprising was the discovery of an extensive digital archive Fritz had been compiling. This searchable database included thousands of still missing artifacts, with all available information about their last known locations and historical significance. This resource, clearly intended as a legacy project, represented decades of research and countless hours of meticulous documentation. As the initial shock of the discovery settled into a more measured appreciation, the FBI's focus shifted from investigation to preservation. The priority became ensuring that Fritz's work would continue even as the collection itself was dispersed to its rightful locations around the world. The mansion, once a private residence and secret repository, now stood at the center of international attention. Discussions began about its potential future as a research center dedicated to the recovery and repatriation of displaced cultural artifacts. A fitting tribute to the unexpected legacy of a man known to millions simply as a television picker with an eye for hidden treasure. What began as a surprising FBI discovery had revealed a life's work dedicated to historical justice and cultural preservation. The antique collector from Iowa, through years of quiet dedication, had changed the conversation about wartime losses and the possibility of recovery and restitution, even decades after the original displacement. This unexpected legacy would continue to unfold in the years to come, as the full impact of his recovery work became apparent in museums and private collections around the world. For Fritz, who had spent his public career finding value in overlooked items, his greatest contribution had remained hidden until now: the recovery and preservation of historical treasures that might otherwise have been lost forever, and with them, the stories and cultural significance they carried. The FBI's discovery in Frank Fritz's mansion didn't just change public perception of one collector. It opened a new chapter in the ongoing effort to address the cultural casualties of conflict, demonstrating that recovery and restitution remain possible even generations after the original loss. What had begun as a shocking discovery had evolved into something much more significant: a legacy of restoration that would continue to unfold long after the initial headlines faded. Beyond the immediate significance of the recovered artifacts, Fritz's work represented something more profound. A private citizen using specialized knowledge and connections to address historical wrongs. This model of cultural recovery, operating at the intersection of private expertise and public interest, suggested new possibilities for addressing the displacement of cultural heritage during times of conflict. As the initial phase of the investigation concluded, the FBI's final report emphasized not criminal activity, but extraordinary service. What had begun as a raid had transformed into a recovery operation with historical significance extending far beyond one Iowa mansion. The shocking discovery had indeed changed everything, not just about one man's legacy, but about what might still be possible in the ongoing effort to heal the cultural wounds of history. The final inventory of Fritz's collection ran to hundreds of pages, each item representing both a historical artifact and a story of loss and recovery. But perhaps the most valuable thing discovered in the mansion wasn't a tangible artifact at all, but rather the evidence that with dedication, expertise, and quiet determination, pieces of history once thought permanently lost could find their way home. One of the most remarkable aspects of Fritz's collection was its diversity. While the World War II artifacts initially captured headlines, further examination revealed items spanning centuries of human conflict. Civil War-era family heirlooms stolen during Sherman's March to the Sea sat alongside cultural artifacts displaced during the Balkan conflicts of the 1990s. This temporal range demonstrated Fritz's understanding that cultural displacement wasn't just a historical issue but an ongoing humanitarian concern. Specialized rooms throughout the mansion revealed Fritz's methodical approach to organization. One chamber, maintained at precise temperature and humidity levels, housed delicate textiles and documents. Another contained metalworks and sculptures, while a third was dedicated entirely to religious artifacts from various faiths, items often targeted during conflicts for both their material and symbolic value. The FBI's forensic accountants, initially assigned to trace potentially illegal financial transactions, instead uncovered an intricate system of legitimate purchases made through proxies and intermediaries. Fritz had developed a network of trusted partners who could appear at auctions or private sales without drawing attention to his ultimate involvement, allowing him to recover items that might otherwise have disappeared back into private collections if his interest became known. Perhaps the most touching discoveries were the personal notes Fritz had attached to many items, not just clinical documentation of provenance, but reflections on the human stories behind each piece. One journal entry, attached to a modest silver menorah recovered from a collection in Argentina, detailed his 3-year search and the family history he had reconstructed, concluding with the simple note, "Returning next month to survivors in Montreal. Closure after 77 years." The investigation revealed that Fritz had been developing relationships with specialized legal experts in cultural repatriation. Correspondence showed consultations with international attorneys about the most effective and legally sound methods for returning items to countries or communities where ownership might be contested or government stability was a concern. This legal foresight demonstrated that Fritz understood the complexities extended beyond mere physical recovery. Fritz's medical records, reluctantly examined as part of understanding his timeline, revealed that doctors had given him a limited prognosis years earlier. This knowledge appeared to have accelerated his efforts, with the most intensive period of his recovery work coinciding with his declining health. What many had interpreted as a withdrawal from public life due to physical limitations was revealed to be a conscious choice to dedicate his remaining time to completing as much of his life's most meaningful work as possible. Technological analysis of Fritz's digital archives showed sophisticated encryption and backup systems, with copies stored in secure locations across multiple countries. This wasn't paranoia, but pragmatism, ensuring that even if something happened to him or his primary collection, the knowledge and documentation necessary for continuing repatriation efforts would survive. Some of these backup locations were entrusted to individuals who hadn't known what they were safeguarding until the FBI investigation brought them to light. The mansion's architecture itself had been subtly modified over years to accommodate Fritz's growing collection. What appeared to be ordinary renovations were revealed as careful adaptations creating secure storage with controlled environmental conditions. Architects consulted by the FBI marveled at the ingenuity with which these modifications had been integrated into the existing structure, without drawing attention from visitors or workers who might have questioned their purpose. In Fritz's workshop, agents discovered specialized tools and conservation materials, indicating that he had taught himself basic preservation techniques to stabilize fragile items until professional conservators could properly assess them. Nearby shelves held reference books on art conservation, international cultural property law, and historical research methodologies, evidence of his commitment to self-education in service of his mission. The investigation also uncovered Fritz's ongoing efforts to authenticate items with uncertain provenance. Rather than simply accepting pieces at face value, he had developed relationships with scientific testing facilities and university research departments who could perform material analysis, carbon dating, and other verification processes without necessarily knowing the full context of what they were examining. This rigorous approach to authentication demonstrated his commitment to historical accuracy and legitimate repatriation. Communications recovered from Fritz's computers revealed tentative plans for a foundation that would continue his work after his death. Draft organizational documents outlined a structure that would bring together experts in cultural heritage, international law, and diplomatic relations to carry forward the mission of identifying, recovering, and returning displaced cultural artifacts. Potential board members had been identified but not yet approached, a task Fritz had apparently been reserving for when his health stabilized. Perhaps most impressive was the evidence of Fritz's personal restraint. Despite opportunities to build a world-class private collection that would have been the envy of museums, he had consistently prioritized repatriation over possession. Items that passed through his hands rarely stayed longer than necessary for documentation, conservation, and arrangement of their return. This self-imposed ethical standard distinguished him from many collectors who might have justified permanent acquisition as preservation. The FBI's cultural property experts were particularly struck by Fritz's natural instinct for prioritization. He had focused not just on valuable or aesthetically significant pieces, but on items with the greatest cultural and historical importance to their communities of origin. This nuanced understanding of cultural value beyond market price demonstrated a sophisticated appreciation for the true significance of heritage items. As the investigation progressed, evidence emerged of Fritz's diplomatic sensitivity. In cases where direct government repatriation might be politically complicated, he had worked with cultural heritage NGOs and international organizations to ensure items could be returned without becoming entangled in larger political disputes. This pragmatic approach had enabled successful repatriations, even in regions experiencing political instability or international tensions. Interviews with Fritz's former business associates revealed occasional hints that had been overlooked at the time. His particular interest in the provenance of items, beyond what might be expected from a typical collector or dealer, had sometimes seemed excessive to colleagues. What had appeared as simple thoroughness now revealed itself as part of a much larger purpose, establishing the legitimate ownership trail necessary for eventual repatriation. The financial sacrifice involved in Fritz's mission became increasingly apparent as investigators analyzed his personal finances. The market value of items he had recovered and returned far exceeded his lifetime earnings from television and business ventures. He had lived modestly compared to his public profile, channeling resources into his recovery work rather than personal luxury. Bank records showed regular withdrawals coinciding with international auction dates, and credit card statements documented travels to remote locations where significant heritage items had reportedly surfaced. One of the most intriguing elements of the investigation was the discovery of Fritz's methodology for identifying potentially recoverable items. He had developed a system for tracking auction listings, gallery showings, and private sales that might include displaced cultural property. This monitoring system, combining automated alerts with human intelligence from his network of contacts, had allowed him to identify opportunities for recovery that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. The mansion's guest records revealed occasional visits from individuals later identified as representatives of cultural ministries, museum security departments, and international organizations concerned with cultural heritage protection. These discreet consultations, often recorded simply as business meetings in Fritz's calendar, had apparently been opportunities to share intelligence about missing artifacts and coordinate recovery efforts across institutional and national boundaries. Perhaps most poignant were the photographs found documenting moments of repatriation, images Fritz had collected but never publicly shared. These quiet records showed museum curators receiving long-lost artifacts, religious leaders holding sacred objects returned to their communities, and in some cases, elderly individuals reunited with family heirlooms they had last seen in childhood. These images, more than any other evidence, conveyed the human impact of Fritz's work and the emotional significance of cultural restitution. The FBI's discovery in Frank Fritz's mansion represented more than just an interesting case or a surprising revelation about a public figure. It offered a new model for understanding how cultural repatriation might work, not just through official channels and institutional efforts, but through dedicated individuals with specialized knowledge using their unique positions to address historical wrongs. The shocking discovery had indeed changed everything, opening new possibilities for healing the cultural wounds of history, and demonstrating that even the most seemingly lost treasures might yet find their way home.